Hello and welcome to Perspectives on the Voice of America. I'm Dimyake Mwakaliele. Zimbabwe's political crisis has seriously impacted its economy. The country's bank chief says the inflation rate has skyrocketed to 2.2 million%, the world's highest rate of inflation. Central Bank Governor Gideon Gono announced on Wednesday the new figure provided by Zimbabwe's Central Statistical Office. The Southern African country's unemployment rate is estimated to be 80%. An estimated 3 million Zimbabweans have fled to South Africa because of the economic collapse. In recent months, Zimbabweans have also fled political violence leading up to a one-man presidential runoff election on June 27th. Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe was re-elected in the widely condemned vote after opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai dropped out of the race, citing state-sponsored violence against his supporters. The ruling and opposition parties are discussing terms for talks aimed at settling the political crisis. United States President George Bush says he is displeased with Russia and China for vetoing UN sanctions against Zimbabwe's government for recent elections the U.S. has called a sham. Mr. Bush's comments were echoed on Capitol Hill Tuesday, where the Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee on African Affairs held a hearing. VOA's Michael Bowman reports.
An arms embargo and a travel ban on President Robert Mugabe were included in the proposed UN sanctions against Harare. Speaking at the hearing, Senator John Kerry of Massachusetts expressed dismay over the international community's failure to respond as one to developments in Zimbabwe.
Mugabe had the audacity to say to the world, what do I care about an election? An X on a ballot means nothing against the power of a gun. And against all of this, where are we? Where's the world? I mean, where are we? China and Russia get to veto this and sort of walk away and there's no outrage?
China says it wants to give more time for dialogue and negotiation before resorting to punitive measures. Russia says the Security Council would be overstepping its responsibilities had the resolution been approved. At the hearing, Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Zhendai Fraser, said the U.S. position is clear.
The United States does not and will not accept the legitimacy of any process that does not reflect the will of the Zimbabwean people.
Fraser said the United States will work to isolate the Mugabe regime, strengthen U.S. sanctions against Harare, and urge other nations to do likewise. She added that Russia and China have helped to enable Mr. Mugabe to continue his disastrous rule.
They need to look at the Zimbabwean government as one in which the people have largely rejected that leadership. And so a new day is coming in Zimbabwe, and China would want to be on the right side of the forces of democratic change.
Fraser said Zimbabwe's people must shape their country's future and that moderate members of Zimbabwe's ruling party must see beyond President Mugabe's personal ambitions. Michael Bowman, VOA News.
Joining us in the studio to discuss the latest on Zimbabwe is Blessing Zulu of VOA's Zimbabwe service. Again, welcome to Perspectives, Blessing.
My pleasure, thank you.
Obviously, the West is expressing a lot of frustration about what's going on in Zimbabwe. They're still talking about expanding these targeted sanctions on some government officials. But there is a lot happening on the ground, isn't there? I mean, within Zimbabwe and also the regional leaders.
Yes, Mr. Mbeki is, of course, continuing with his mediation effort, but I think there have also been conflicting reports as to what is happening, with some saying there was a memorandum of understanding that would have been signed yesterday. But talking to the officials who are involved in the negotiating process, they are saying they are yet to come up with that memorandum of understanding. But I think the picture will become more clearer tomorrow when President Mbeki meets the AU Commission Chairman, Mr. Jean Ping, in Pretoria tomorrow.
But now ZANU-PF itself, at least in the state paper just this weekend, announced that this memorandum of engagement will take place very soon. What is stalling the settlement?
From what we are hearing from our sources, what is happening is that the MDC is insisting that violence must actually stop. Because even after Mr. Mugabe won this controversial election, the violence has continued. And today, a few hours ago, Mr. Tsvangirai was at Warren Hills in Harare burying another slain activist.
So I think that violence continues.
Yes, that is where the problem is.
Briefly on the economy, 2 million% inflation. What is the governor planning to do about this?
The governor has essentially said that there is need for a political solution to this because he himself, there's nothing more that he can do. So he's also waiting for these negotiations to go ahead so that at least there can be capital injection from the IMF and the World Bank, for example. Other than that, we are seeing an economy that is headed for collapse.
Thank you so much, Blessing Zulu of VOA Zimbabwe Service. And that's all from us here at Perspectives. Until tomorrow, I'm Dimiake Mokaliele for the Voice of America.